Welcome in to the PFF podcast. Steve Palazzolo back here again with Sam Monson. We're coming to you from our offices, our little closet in Cincinnati for our favorite episode of the week. It is the Mailbag edition. Sam's got a deflated football over here.
Yep.
That we're tossing around. We're going to do our demonstration in a bit.
Yeah.
That we promised on Monday of the Devontae Adams game-winning catch, the seal catch. So, yeah, we'll post that somewhere for sure. It's happening today. And we might toss the football around during the episode because why not? It's fun. This is the episode where you guys fuel the whole thing. You guys send us the mail, the tweets, whatever it might be. We're getting more and more, Sam. There's a lot more to sort through now.
Yeah, and from all over the place. We've got them coming from more from Europe, more from, obviously, America.
There's very few Americans, I think, that listen to us, though, based off these numbers.
I think there's a lot.
Proportionally, this is not good.
Well, clearly,
Europe's winning.
Yeah, Europe are winning with the emails anyway.
Europe is winning, not are winning.
Europe apparently is a lot more keen to email. America, I think, is more of a social media kind of continent. You know,
I got you.
You're gonna deal 140 characters or 280,
maybe 280 if you're blessed.
Yeah. Europe wants to go in deep with the emails though. Apparently.
Yes. So we have some good ones. You want to dive right into them?
Yeah.
Let's do it. All right. We've got one from Denmark. So what's his name, Sam?
Mads, apparently. Mads.
Mads Blanker. Blanker?
Yeah.
Blanker.
Sure. We've got a great pronunciation attempt coming up later, by the way. I've kept this question in just to hear Steve attempt to take a shot at the name.
Maybe our outtakes episode, Taylor, should be just me pronouncing names nonstop from the entire year.
Cleve.
Just a quick question from an avid PFF listener from Denmark who also happens to be a friendly Eagles fan. We did request some friendly Eagles fans to show up, and we got at least 3 of them.
They exist.
This week, so welcome. One Eagles question: why are the Eagles insisting on rotating Chance Warmack and Stefan Wisniewski at left guard when Wisniewski is clearly the better player? I just don't get it. So let's handle that question first. Sam, do you have a good answer?
No, I don't. I don't know why they're doing that because I agree. Wisniewski is a better player. Just this season, their PFF grades say so. Wisniewski has a 75.4 overall grade. Warmack has a 57.9 overall grade. But Wisniewski also has a history of being a better player than Warmack does. He just doesn't have the lofty draft status.
He also has a history of being a better player, but not always having as many opportunities as lesser players.
Yeah.
One of those guys that we seem to like more than the NFL.
Well, I think he's like a poor man's Evan Mathis in terms of it's
about not losing.
Yeah.
Not losing, right.
So
and Warmack, since he got drafted as this mauling run blocker, and every now and again he'll break out this, impressive block, and those are the types of things that kind of, get the coaches loving the top end blocks instead of maybe just not losing.
Yeah, I think that's what he is. He's a lot like the kind of Davin Joseph thing. Every now and again he can do something that looks like a first round pick, and coaches will spend the rest of their lives trying to get him to do that every down.
I'll coach it out of him. I'll get him more consistent. Mads also went on to praise us and say all sorts of nice things. I won't read every last word, but he also says, I would like to chime in on finishing being overrated for offensive linemen, CC Mike Renner, and that just don't lose, the same thing we're talking about right now, that in quotes, just don't lose, makes for a very successful offensive lineman. And this is coming from a former offensive lineman and Danish champion. I know it's not the Irish League, but maybe that's even a good thing. So we're getting some football analysis not only from you in the Irish League, we're also getting it from the Danish League now, and a Danish champion.
I was trying to remember how good the Danish League is to work out if that's a shot or not at the Irish League. I can't remember if the Danish... Having said that, champion, so whatever, Can't take that away.
He's the best in the league.
Exactly.
And he's a great listener. He's a nice Eagles fan. He can do whatever he wants as well. So we appreciate that feedback as well. Again, finishing overrated. Those are those on Twitter. Like, I just pushed this guy while the play's over, tripping over 12 linemen, and we think it's the best block in the world, and has nothing to do with the play.
There's always a trip in there as well.
Always a trip. There's always a trip. But when an offensive lineman trips, it's
like,
hey, he tripped. He tripped.
First to point out when the offensive lineman gets stood on and falls over.
And the first to praise the offensive lineman who pushes the tripping defensive lineman.
Some double standards there amongst the offensive line community.
You will hear from our favorite offensive lineman, newest PFF analyst, Will Montgomery, later in the show. We did this last week, had a little debut segment with him and Mike Renner. They'll be talking about pass protection later in the show today. Can't wait to hear what Will Montgomery, former NFL center, has to say about pass protection and PFF grades.
So they're not just talking about some stuff this week.
Well, last week, yeah, I pitched it as just some stuff because I did not hear the segment beforehand. I've been alerted to what they're going to talk about this week.
You at least took the time to find out what they'd be talking about.
Rumor has it it's pass protection.
I like it.
All right, we have another foreign question. My name's Brian. I'm a PhD student in economics from... What?
So this guy actually spelled out the phonetic pronunciation of Kildare.
From County Kildare, now, all the way from Ireland.
Yes. Kildare is a place that's about 20 minutes away from my house that I just left and abandoned in Ireland. My wife is from Kildare. I'm relatively comfortable pronouncing Kildare.
You could have hung out and had a pint
I guess
together.
Maybe he was just doing
pronunciation's for me because I read the question.
Yes, that's what I think. Maybe he was just being safe because you're reading it out. But even you, I would think, would have had a fair shot at Kildare.
There's a good chance I would have pulled out Kildare or something
Possibly,
like that.
Yeah.
So it's Kildare, all the way from Ireland. You put out the call for non-angry Eagles fans to get in touch with PFF, and I wanted to send in my 2 cents. So we have 2 straight non-angry Eagles fans. Welcome again.
That's all we were looking for.
My question for you guys follows up on the last pod, the 10th of October, discussing the improvements they made in the wide receiver and defensive back areas. Which area of improvement to this point do you feel will revert back to the mean, and which team will expose it? Will it be the Panthers this week with taller receivers on a short week? My first feeling on this is reverting back to the mean as far as the Eagles receivers versus cornerbacks. I would say it's the cornerbacks that should be reverting back because Patrick Robinson playing among the league's best. Talked about him a little bit on Monday. And we have Ronald Darby, who's hurt. We thought he was kind of like the savior of that group, and he's banged up. And they've pretty much, they haven't played unbelievably, but they've overachieved a little bit.
No, I think that's exactly it. We talked about Patrick Robinson having a career year so far, and that's unlikely to continue at that level going forward. Having said that, if you call up their schedule, it isn't the most intimidating set of receivers you're going to see. They face the Panthers this week, Washington, the 49ers, the Denver Broncos, the Dallas Cowboys, the Chicago Bears with the worst receiving core in the league, Seattle, the Rams, the Giants, who have no receivers left anymore, the Raiders, whose offense is talented but struggling, and the Cowboys again. So they're not going to face the worst slate of receivers. I mean, if Robinson isn't going to go up against guys that you say he has no shot of covering those guys. You know what I mean? So that's the most likely one to regress, but I mean, looking at the schedule, I don't know if it's a certainty to.
He's just sitting here leading the league in our playmaker index, most pass defenses plus interceptions divided by attempts. I mean, that part of it, I just don't expect him to be able to maintain.
No, but as I say, it's more encouraging than it would have been before I looked at the schedule.
Yeah, so let's say the pass defense has been better than expected in Philadelphia as far as just pure grades go, but we'll see. I think I would say that might regress. I like the Eagles receivers. Aguilar he's breaking out a little bit. Alshon Jeffrey's been a good fit, and Carson Wentz looking a little bit better this year. All right, we have another question. This is from at Jake Forsake. Jake L? Is this? No. At Jake Forsake. Okay. This was an email? This was another email for us.
Yeah.
He also says Jake L.
Yeah.
So it's Jake L, Jake Forsake. Really enjoy the podcast. Wanted to throw my idea into the rapidly growing pile of amazing changes that should be made to the NFL.
Now, right off the bat, that's starting off confident. This is a guy who thinks he has a good idea, and you're always a bit worried about that because somebody comes out and says, this is the greatest idea you've ever heard. You're thinking, nah, it probably is.
And then like last week, we trashed it on the podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Having said that, and it was a long email as well. I was between coming at me saying this is a great idea and giving me a giant long email. My hopes weren't high. I was expecting some problems, but having read this, I think this is fantastic.
You cut this down a little bit, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. This is edited significantly.
All right, quick recap. NFL has tried to make the extra point a more exciting play, but also wanted to make the kickoffs less dangerous. Can we hit 2 birds with 1 genius stone? The confidence continues there. These 2 plays happen directly after each other anyway. Here's the proposal. Combine the 2, where the kickoff from the 35-yard line will count as 1 point if it goes through the uprights. But if it doesn't, then the kickoff continues as usual, no touchbacks or returns. No, as usual, with touchbacks or returns.
Yeah.
A 2-point conversion can still happen as normal, but with no kickoff. Instead, the ball would be placed at the normal touchback spotting. So we've got this kickoff on a tee from the 35. Kicking it through the uprights is not all that common.
No.
So it could be one. We're getting a thumbs up over here from Taylor. This would bring excitement to the game.
I love this idea. The extra point is a terrible play right now. It was so bad that they tried to move it back just to make it vaguely interesting and give you a reason for, wasting minutes of your life going through this experience to put a point in the board. This is fantastic. This solves all that problem. It makes the extra point an actual thing that you care about, and it's more difficult to do, and it eliminates a pointless play from the game. Let's face it, everybody has fun with a kicker putting it through the goalpost anyway on a kickoff. So all it's doing is adding some relevance to that and making it actually score a point. This is outstanding.
So this would be fascinating in weather games.
Yeah.
You got wind, you've got snow. You wouldn't even try to maybe kick it through the uprights. You would just focus on the return. Or it doesn't matter. Like it's a win-win.
Yeah.
Because you're just trying the extra point and then you have to cover it. He did bring up, should the kickoff still happen at the 35 or moved up a little bit to be a little bit more likely to go through? I really think the percentages on these going through would be like 20%.
Probably, yeah.
So maybe I'd move it up a little bit, but then you're talking about...
The only downside, and that might not even be a downside, but then you're basically eliminating the kickoff because nothing is going to come back.
Yeah.
Because everyone's going to be shooting for that. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
That's what they're saying. They're trying to make
and the NFL is trying to do that anyway, so... two birds with one stone.
Another interesting point, he says, this also means that onside kicks are giving up the chance for 1 point for possible possession.
Huge.
So so should that be rewarded by moving the ball further to cause a successful onside kick, less distance to go? It is a fantastic idea. I didn't think that these ideas existed.
No. I think this is outstanding. This is right up there with Renner's solution to overtime with the just series of 2-point play attempts. Sudden death, 2-point play attempts. I think this is right up there with that. I think we could revolutionize the game with this.
Hey, I'm impressed, Jake. I am impressed. I have to say this, Sam. Our listeners have really come through the last few weeks as far as the number of emails we've gotten, the amount of thought that they've put into it. Of course, they're saying some kind words, too. That always feels good, and we appreciate that. But, I mean, I just love the thought and effort that everybody's putting into this.
I think what we need to do is to start documenting these, taking the good ideas, the couple last week we can leave in the trash bin.
Taking them to the NFL.
Yeah. We need to start creating a dossier of this is how the Pro Football Focus podcast will change the NFL for the better and ride to power on the back of this manifesto.
Let's get this in front of Goodell immediately. All right. Do we have to read this next question? This is ridiculous.
No, we absolutely do.
All right. Sam's mom writes in, these questions are for Sam because if I'm being honest, Sam Monson is the only guy in life I can trust. No offense to any tall humans who may or not be reading this. Mr. Monson, here are 2 questions for you. I don't even want to read these questions. I don't know why you have your mom or your sister write in under fake names every single week.
Look, the people want what the people want, and apparently the people want me and not you. There's nothing I can do about that. I have tried to make you seem like a more generous and caring human across social media. I've put your visage out there on the web, and it just doesn't do anything. There's no goodwill coming back towards Steve. It's all for me. And I'm sorry about that.
I have to imagine out of our millions and millions of listeners, there are at least some Steve fans out there. We just choose not to write emails, apparently.
You say that, and yet, so far, where are they?
Look, I know my fans are out there. Could you guys please write in and offset all of this love that Sam is getting? Please just somebody fake it till you make it.
This is now sounding depressing.
Am I begging too much?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay, forget it. I don't need your love. How about that? But if you guys do love me, don't be afraid to email in podcasts@profootballfocus.com. Tell me how smart I am and how good I am as well. You can ask me questions as well, not just Sam, because this seems to be a weekly thing. Let me answer Gary's question, who finishes with, "You the man, Sam!" ! The question in the middle, can you explain Carlos Hyde's grade, San Francisco 49ers running back? He's the second lowest graded running back on PFF, but outside of last week, he has seemed to be very productive in Kyle Shanahan's system. I see you've written some notes down here, Sam. I'll let you handle this one.
Yeah, so he is the 7th highest graded rusher in the league so far, 332 rushing yards from 73 carries, which is 4.5 yards a clip. Pretty impressive. All of his bad plays are the kind of stuff that doesn't necessarily show up. So he's got 3 either fumbles or muffed handoffs, which go down as a fumble for the quarterback, but can often be on the running back. He's got a drop in there. He's got 8 sacks, pressures, or losing the block where it doesn't become a pressure, a defeated block that we call it. So he's just got a bunch of negatives in there that are kind of hidden in the box score and making him, go into his overall grade, which drag him down a bit. As a runner, he's been fine, but things like the ball security and the fumbles are going to drag that grade down.
Okay, good question. Good explanation from you. Where's his rushing grade, did you say?
I didn't say his rushing grade. I said he was 7th.
Oh, you just said his rushing
yardage.
Rushing yards. Okay.
Yeah.
I think you may have misspoken and said grade at first, which confused me. Long run of 61 yards, averaging 4.5 per carry. Yeah, so he's been fine. It's definitely the ball security issues in the blocking. Great. All right, we've got another question. This one dives a little deeper into some offensive line play. I think it's a fair question. Is it possible for a quarterback to have the fastest average time to throw, the fewest pressures, yet the most QB sacks, with the O-line getting graded well by PFF? We're getting at the Oakland Raiders here. So he's asking, in the last 3 games, Derek Carr has been sacked every 9.5 dropbacks. EJ Manuel was not much better with a sack every 12.3 dropbacks. Carson Palmer, by reference, is getting sacked every 13 dropbacks. You always keep citing the Arizona Cardinals offensive line that's on pace for a record-breaking number of pressures. At what point is it considered an O-line issue when QBs are getting out the ball faster than everyone else, yet being sacked at a higher rate? I understand the whole pressure thing, but if the O-line is only giving up 4 pressures in a game, but those 4 pressures were completely catastrophic breakdowns that all result in sacks, that has to be worse than a team giving up 10 pressures that made the quarterback a little uncomfortable and only ended up in 1 sack, correct? That's from Kevin, who says thanks. And you've got some notes in here, too. I have some thoughts as well. I'll let you handle this.
Yeah, so it's an interesting area generally to talk about, and there's a lot of moving parts in all of this. I mean, the first thing, the answer to that end bit is yes, I think that is true, and that is accounted for in the grading. So, there are plays where the offensive line gives up a sack, and it's only a minus 0.5 pressure or minus 0.5 sack in our system. And there are plays where the quarterback gets away with catastrophic pressure, but that pressure is a minus 1.5. And the reverse is true as well. So in those 2 scenarios, he's giving up where an offensive line is giving up 4 sacks, but they're all catastrophic disasters, versus the offensive line that only gives up 1 and gives up more pressure, but it's all tiny, niggly little pressure. They're not going to end up with the one giving up fewer pressures being graded better just because there were fewer pressures. We take into account the severity of the pressure when we're looking at offensive line grades, which is why the Raiders thing is interesting, because for whatever reason, and it does appear to just be a quirk of numbers at this point, they have an incredibly high sack rate despite not surrendering an awful lot of pressure. So we have them graded really well this season because they're playing well, they're not giving up much pressure. It's just that every time they seem to give up pressure, it's a sack.
But that doesn't seem sustained. That is a quirk of numbers.
Exactly. I think that is just a freak of the numbers so far through 5 games, and it won't end up that way through the season. So his initial question, is it possible for that to happen? I guess it is, but I wouldn't bet on it happening. I mean, if that is the same case after 16 games it is after 5, that would be something I don't think we've ever seen before. And
that's also 4 very
extremely weird.
Those are also extreme numbers. The fastest average time to throw, the fewest pressures, the most sacks, and the O-line getting graded.
So in theory, it's possible, but I don't expect that to be the case after 16 games.
Yeah, I have a couple thoughts there. I mean, Derek Carr is usually a guy who's low on the sack as a percentage of pressure number, which is generally pretty consistent. If you guys have PFF Elite, you can check it out. You go to the quarterbacks, you go to the under pressure tab, and then the sack percentage number. I think that's a very telling number. That is, again, the percentage of pressured snaps that turn into sacks.
Well, that was Peyton Manning's number.
Peyton was always good at it. Kirk Cousins is generally pretty good at it. This was one of those things I thought may have separated Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota coming out, where Jameis was always really low in this number, and Mariota was high, the percentage of pressured snaps that turned into sacks. Most guys are generally pretty good at it, or they're pretty bad at it, and there's not a whole lot of movement within that spectrum. Carr's off to a slow start in that number. I'd expect that to revert back. The other thing, too, you talk about we grade just how bad the pressure is from the lineman or how good it is from the defensive lineman. If you get a minus 1.5 in our scale, which is about as bad as it gets, once you lose your block, the difference between that becoming a pressure, a hit, or a sack is very much on the quarterback. Now, the quicker you give up the pressure, yes, it's more likely to become a sack, but the ball could get out quickly from the quarterback, or he could juke the defender and save the sack and all that fun stuff. So judging linemen by sacks in general, not really the way to go. On the other hand, like a defensive lineman, when he gets that 1.5 pressure, chances are it's because he finished it, not because he just got there quickly and mid. I mean, you generally have to finish it to get the sack. But once you lose a block as an offensive lineman, you don't control the result of that play.
So when you look at the sacks and the pressures that the Raiders have given up this year, there's only one play in there, one sack in there that's a minus 1.5 sack.
Yes.
So they've only lost catastrophically once. 3 of their sacks this season, 2 or more players had pressure at the same time. On only one of them, 3 or more guys gave up pressure in the same time. On only 4 pressures all season did 2 or more guys give up pressure on the same play. So it's not a case of this offensive line is fine until random plays where it catastrophically breaks down and the entire pocket disintegrates quickly around the quarterback. That isn't what is happening in the case of the Raiders. So again, I think it is just a quirk of numbers through 5 weeks, and those extremes will swing back to the norm somewhere, and we're going to see a good offensive line get a better sack rate as the season goes on.
So I think that brings up another point too, because a lot of our analysis is based off individual players, not so much units. And if we were just evaluating a unit as a whole, we would say this play that resulted in a sack was bad because it resulted in a sack. But there's a lot of plays where it's just one guy gives up the sack, he gets blamed for it, he gets the negative, which is different from like how I always describe Phillip Rivers and the Chargers offensive line last year. Even on plays when he wasn't sacked, it was like you're in this little closet right here that we're in, and the walls are caving in on you from all angles. So in our world, a play where 4 offensive linemen are getting bull rushed into Phillip Rivers' lap and he gets the pass off is going to hurt that offensive line's grade far worse than just Menelik Watson being the one weak link on this one play where he gives up a sack, or this one player gives up a sack and everybody else is clean. Even though if we were evaluating as a whole, we would say this play where the line gave up a sack in theory should be worse than the play where they didn't give up a sack. But in our world, it's not really the case. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Are you
Great.
talking about like the walls closing in on this small closet? Are you trying to give me some kind of claustrophobia thing?
Am I messing with your head?
No, I don't have that. But if I did, that would be freaking me out right now.
Yes. So it would be like this little claustrophobic
windowless brick-walled closet that is already pretty small and tight. You're talking about the walls closing in, and
yes,
that would be unpleasant.
It's poorly decorated, minus 1 pink Post-it with Des Bryant's PDs on it.
Yeah, we got to do better.
And scribbles, and we need to decorate this place a little bit better. More pictures of your boss, Chris, and stuff like that.
I was thinking more like those plays that we've been sent, getting run up and posted on the walls. But
if you guys send us some play diagrams of your, like this kickoff, what this kickoff extra point might look like, a little diagram of it, we'll put it up on the wall.
Little square MS Paint football diagram, and we're going to start decorating the walls of this place with
Only
those.
MS Paint. I don't want anything that looks too good.
Yeah, no, look, if it looks like it's actually professional, that's not going up on the wall.
We don't want any of that. Quick break to tell you guys about our friends over at Draft. That's draft.com or Draft in your app store. Great way to play fantasy football. We've been doing it since before the season. They've got best ball leagues, so you don't have to worry about your transactions every week. You don't have to worry about picking up players off the waiver wire. You don't have to worry about injuries. They will take your best players every single week. There are full season leagues, but also a number of other great ways to play, whether it's I'm looking at it right now, 10-person draft, 6-person draft, head-to-head draft, so many different ways to play, and in multiple sports, NFL, MLB, NHL, golf, or NBA. So get in there and have some fun. And the best part about it is you guys can win real money. And we're here to offer you guys a free $3 game when you guys make your first deposit. Just have to use the promo code PFF when you sign up, and you'll get a free $3 game. That's over at draft.com or Draft in your app store. Go ahead and download it. Use the promo code PFF for your first deposit and have some fun. We're having a ton of fun with it, playing in multiple games, different styles. Sam was playing in a golf game a few weeks ago. Is that right? How did that turn out?
That went fantastically until I forgot about it and forgot to redraft, and then things went to hell quickly. I was winning, and then I forgot about it.
So keep up a little bit with your teams, but overall they're going to take your best players, and especially with the NFL, you don't have to worry about your waiver wire. Draft.com, draft in the App Store. PFF is your promo code.
So this ball that we've been playing around with that I just thought was some random de-inflated football kicking around on our shelves, turns out might actually be an actual football from the New England St. Louis Super Bowl.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we should probably put this back where we got it before we destroy it.
That would explain the deflation.
Yes, it would. An actual deflated ball from the first.
There is a Super
Patriots
Bowl
Super
logo
Bowl.
on it. This is just a replica. It's not.
You think?
This isn't really from.
I think it might be real. Yeah, I think we should probably put that back on the shelf before we destroy it.
You can do one seal catch.
Oh no, yeah, we can still use it for the purpose it was intended. I'm just thinking we probably shouldn't be, using that as our regular. Screwing around in the office football.
Do you think Tom Brady actually touched this ball?
I think there's a chance he did.
I'm taking it home with me.
Yeah.
All right, let's get back to your questions. Don't forget, guys, coming up a little later on, Will Montgomery, former, how many years in the NFL? At least 10, right?
Yeah, a long time.
10-plus year NFL center, newest PFF analyst. He'll be on with Mike Renner discussing offensive line play. All right, next question gets into some more philosophizing about running backs. Love the pod. I've had this question for a little while now. Why is average yards per carry so widely promoted when median yards per carry would be a better reflection of a running back's true success? Here's this quick example. You have two running backs that both have 20 carries for 100 yards. I see Taylor over here taking notes and writing this down, so write it down at home. 20 carries, 100 yards. That's 5 yards per carry. But one running back in this extreme example has a long run of 81 yards out of that 100, and the other just rushes for 5 yards every single carry for 20 straight. I didn't read his exact explanation, but that's the basic gist of it, right?
Yeah.
So would median, what's the actual question here?
We're basically asking why do we use average yards per carry when a running back racks off 81 yards and skews his numbers? So we're looking at a guy who got nothing all game, then broke a 95-yard run, and his average looks fantastic. Whereas really, if you look at his average for that game, his average went nowhere until he broke one because the defense broke down.
Right.
So instead, why don't we use the mean, which would give you the one in the middle, the common one in the middle of that, which for this guy would be nothing until he broke off his 1 yard line.
His median would have been 1 yard per carry.
Yeah.
The other running back's median would have been 5 yards per carry because
he's breaking that off every single time. Yeah.
So I liked the idea initially. Ran it by the analytics team, and they were like, it's still not a great... They said neither method is really good, yards per carry or median. And they basically said it would all even off over time.
I love that your math is suspect enough that you had to run this through the math people.
No, I just wanted to...
Which one of these average things? This is... You learn averages when you're 12, don't you?
I wasn't asking them if the math made... I wasn't asking them about the math. I asked them about the philosophy here.
But the basic knowledge of what the math does should have given you a pretty good indication of how that went.
I know what the median is.
Yeah.
It was about asking the value, and it was essentially bringing up, would you rather the guy that broke off 5 per carry or the guy that had 81?
I'm just saying, this doesn't seem like it needs input from the math people.
Good, then I didn't ask them.
Good.
It never happened.
Yeah. It's only a problem on those single games where it skews, where a guy does skew his numbers because of that one big run, and the big run is also listed in the box score. So even if you want, even if you don't need the median to prevent yourself getting taken down a blind alley by the weird box score with the big number.
So you're just completely dismissing this?
Pretty much, yeah.
Just like our friends
also,
at the
I don't
team?
care about that number anyway, so,
Sorry. So try again.
Who's that? Who are we dismissing?
Michael from Birmingham.
Sorry. Good attempt, but no.
So far, Europe's winning.
This next question, though, is my favorite because I left this in here just to give Steve a stab at attempting this name. So let's handle the question first, and then we'll give you a shot to pronounce the name of the person that sent it to us.
It's another foreign question, and then we have another foreign. Why is it all foreign questions? Why did you filter only people from Ireland?
You are from Boston. There's no reason you can't pronounce this name.
This is not a Bostonian name.
Anyway, the question...
Unless it's Sully, I got no shot.
It's not far off.
My question... you answer.
Yeah, the question is, what is the best quarterback/offensive coordinator combination in the NFL? So you know who you're going to go for. Let's break that out.
I immediately
get it over
said
with.
Brady and McDaniels,
yes,
right?
What a shock.
You've got the best quarterback in the NFL, which certainly helps. the relationship with the coordinator. But there's also a lot of fun documentation out there. There was a video a couple weeks ago showing the in-game adjustments that they made against the Texans and some of the plays that McDaniels calls, and they definitely work really well together, see the game well together, make adjustments well together. So Brady and McDaniels, I think that has to be the best combination, but that's too obvious, right? So what else do we have, Sam?
If you count Andy Reid as the offensive coordinator in Kansas City, I think you can make that case that certainly this year, Alex Smith and Andy Reid are the best. Before he went to Los Angeles now, McVay and Kirk Cousins, I think, would be a good one. You talked a lot about how McVay is largely responsible for making Cousins look significantly better than he actually is. So I think that held true. It's holding true to a certain degree with the Rams with Jared Goff, but I don't think he's been good enough to yet put them in that kind of conversation.
You can't put them in yet.
I think those would be the good ones.
I would have said Matt Ryan and Kyle Shanahan last year.
Yeah, same deal.
That was a funny one, though, because they weren't as good as the previous year. It just wasn't the right mesh. They weren't using the deep ball as much in 2015. Last year, though, everything clicked. Shanahan called outstanding plays. Ryan executed the offense at a really high level. So that was a good combo.
This is from Joe, and Joe's surname is pronounced how, Steve?
Jodgen. That's Jodgen.
Yeah, so Joe.
That's how I would say it in Boston.
This is from Joe Gagan, Steve.
Gagan?
Gagan, yes. Gagan, for anyone that
Where's the A sound?
Is unfamiliar with Irish/Gaelic spelling pronunciation, Geoghegan.
Yeah, it looks like George without the R.
It does.
Gan.
But it is Gagan. Joe Gagan.
So when I saw the George part, I was like, I'll do this all Boston-y. I'll say it's Jodge.
Yeah.
That's how my mom would pronounce Jodge.
Yeah.
That's Jodge in. So it's Joe Jodgen.
It was a valiant attempt. It really was.
It's
but
Gagan?
Sadly, it's not even close.
Why do you guys make up your own language over there? Speak English.
Boston is full enough of Irish people that I would have thought Gagan.
But I said, they're all named Sully. And it's like, hey, Sully. That's it. That's Boston. Hey, Sully. There's no Gagans in Boston.
There must be some non-Sully Irish people in Boston.
And I grew up with the Italian people in Boston, too.
Okay.
And they pretty much made fun of all the Sullys.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, well, sadly, had you had exposure to those people earlier in life, you would have known that was Gagan.
Maybe I would have come up with Gagan. My pronunciations continue. I'm O for forever.
Oh, for a lot.
And now we have another question from Dublin. What's this one about right now?
Oh, this is the rugby one. So I only put this in.
All right, you handle this, Sam.
There's a lot of talk about, can you imagine integrating rugby skills into things like punt and kick returns? And, you see those end of the Dallas-Green Bay game where it gets to the last play and the only way of doing this is to endless laterals, and keep going until somebody breaks free or inevitably a lineman gets involved and then it ends right there.
Travis Frederick.
Yes. And when was the last one where J.J. Watt destroyed some poor center catching the ball?
Was that the Jags?
Was it the Jags? Yeah, was it Brandon Linder caught the ball and then J.J. Watt crucified him in the middle of the field, ended that game pretty much.
No, it was the Bengals game.
Yes.
Bodine.
Yes, it was.
Bodine got wrecked.
So anyway, that tends to happen. Endless laterals until an offensive lineman catches the ball and then the play is dead. But the one place in football where I think a rugby-style pass, or at least a rugby skill set, does make sense is option plays and tosses. The way that football players are taught to pitch the option with that kind of fingers splayed upwards and ball spinning backwards in and of itself is ridiculous. That is the dumbest way of pitching a football I've ever come across, and is in no way an accurate, reliable way to pitch a ball. It would be so much easier to just rugby pass the thing to him, which essentially they do anyway on...
That's the two-hand underhand.
Yeah. So, yeah, kind of. It's essentially the pitch play that you get on stretch plays. The quarterback kind of turns, plants his leg, and ball across. That pitch play is essentially a rugby pass. All you need to be able to do...
Can you keep top speed, though? Can you keep top speed with the rugby pitch?
It's designed in its... the whole purpose of that is that you can pass that ball as you're running at full speed to a guy who is running at full speed.
So, like Georgia Tech, the way they run the option and all that
stuff. If you change that ridiculous flick of the ball to a rugby pass...
You can pitch this both ways, both hands.
Again, part of the reason you pass that way. So that does make sense. I mean, the only negative to using it, in theory, it makes sense. Like if you taught players how to actually offload the ball laterally over the course of plays, I mean, it would make things devastating, but it would be a huge, like it's a lot of work to get to that skill set from nothing. You know what I mean? Like rugby players are getting to that from the age of 7 playing all the way up.
Or you get the best rugby players running the option.
Yeah, I don't know how that's going to work too well. I mean, Jared Hayne didn't exactly set the world alight, and now he went, you know.
He wasn't running the option, though.
You reckon if he'd just run the option, he
was
would have
the running back. Plus, he had that one. Remember, he had that 130-yard run to kick things off, and everybody thought he was.
But
great.
You need multiple players doing that. Like, my point is, if you integrated a rugby skill set generally into football, it would be productive. Because, you know, like times where instead of a receiver blocking downfield, he becomes a second option, and this guy, instead of getting tackled by the last man there, can just offload to an inside receiver, and that guy's gone the distance. Like, those are kind of routine plays in rugby that can't happen because NFL players aren't even looking for it.
Right.
But I don't see how you can get to that from the position they are now, because it's too big a jump in skill sets. The one place I think, though, that it does make sense is that instead of, you just change the way option pitches work. So instead of those crazy finger splayed things, you just teach them how to rugby pass a simple pitch. I mean, that's not hard.
We might need to demonstrate these with the Super Bowl ball as well.
Yeah.
All of the various pitches.
And then put that back before we destroy it.
You might get fired for taking this off the shelf.
Look, it's a Tom Brady Super Bowl. Everyone knows that you'll have been the one that stole it. I was an innocent bystander.
I might bring it home with me. We'll see. We've got a couple more things to hit on, but before we do, just want to remind you guys that this episode is brought to you by PredictionMachine.com. Prediction Machine, a new generation in sports analytics where they play the games or simulate the games 50,000 times before they're actually played. Make better picks with proven data-driven analysis. Subscribe at PredictionMachine.com today and earn a $5 credit that can be used towards the purchase of any package. Are we done with questions actually for today?
No, I got one more that I pulled out from Twitter.
Because I had one other thing to maybe cover. I wanted to talk about some of the turnover-worthy play numbers.
Okay, cool. Well, let's read this one because it's one that I want to pitch to you anyway.
Go for it.
I don't want to answer it. Is Deshaun Watson different from RG3 or Colin Kaepernick in terms of young, mobile quarterbacks that are winning because of this mobility in their skill set outside of the general structure of NFL offenses, that a guy that will be figured out ultimately down the line once teams kind of figure out what their tendencies, once teams get a handle on what these guys are doing and how they're winning? That is from @Ben Woodfinden, I think.
Another foreigner.
I don't think he is. I think he's just got a weird name.
Oh, don't hate on our listeners. You just called him weird.
I called his name weird.
Different. It's
okay,
just different.
He's a man with a different name.
I called him a foreigner. I don't know. I like all of our guys.
It's a very xenophobic podcast all of a sudden.
I like all of our listeners, no matter where you're from. I appreciate all of you guys. Is that clean enough?
Oh yeah, that saved it perfectly. Yeah, everything? We're good.
Okay.
Legal's giving us the thumbs up.
Perfect. It's a fair question. I don't think that they're similar. I do think Kaepernick and RG3 did come in at a time when the zone read was just a little foreign to the NFL. They used it a ton early on, and they had a lot of success, and there was a bit of an adjustment period. I do think skill set-wise, RG3 was limited. I mean, I don't think that the Redskins truly trusted him to sit back in the pocket on 3rd and 7, read out a play, get from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, and move the chains. So they played to his strengths. They did a fantastic job scheming up for him, and then things went sour on and off the field, is what happened with RG3 and the Shanahans over in Washington. So that was the issue there. With Kaepernick, man, I had such high hopes for Kaepernick. I was blinded by some of the downfield throws that he would make, just deep crossers with perfect accuracy, and he would show touch, and he had a cannon. I just don't think he ever developed into just a pure all-around passer. He couldn't make short area touch throws consistently. He didn't always read things out. Overall was a pretty good decision maker as far as taking care of the football. He just didn't have every throw in his bag. He just couldn't throw consistently over the linebackers in front of the safeties consistently. I think everybody flashes it at some point. So that's my issue. I think RG3 was limited a little bit with reading things out. Kaepernick from an arm skill set standpoint, I think Watson has all those tools in his bag, and then he just gets elevated a little bit by what he can do athletically. Where he's limited, there are still questions about, I guess it is a little close to the RG3 thing. Can he sit back and read from 1 to 2 to 3 can he handle something post-snap that's different from pre-snap? Zach always talks about this on our QB episodes. He's really good pre-snap at when he sees something pre-snap and then it's the same thing post-snap. He knows where to go and he can throw the ball and it's great. It's once something changes post-snap, he's not as good at adjusting on the fly. And Zach always comes up with the point that there will be some games where he goes up against a team that's not great at disguising and he'll be good. And there are other games he'll go up against a more difficult defense that's a little bit more tricky and difficult to read out, and things won't be as great. So I would say Watson's a step above those other guys, but still has his own limitations. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Well explained.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I just wanted to touch on, it's not really a question, but it's something we've talked about here on the podcast, and I ran the numbers on it. Turnover-worthy plays. It's a number that we talk about all the time here. And those are our lowest graded plays in our quarterback grading system. And don't forget, our grading system is from +2 to -2 on a play-by-play basis in 0.5 increments. So we're talking about those plays that are like a -1, a -1.5, or a -2, the worst you can have, other than the 1 -3 we gave out. 1 -3 through the years.
Call that the Matt Schaub.
The Schaub. Late game, I'm just going to throw a pick six to Sherman instead of taking the sack play. Sometimes you got to go above and beyond with the grading. So I ran the numbers, turnover-worthy plays this year. And again, this is bragging about PFF. This is my favorite thing. 4 turnover-worthy plays have been completed this year. 4 of them have been completed, and they're still getting at least a -1 or worse, depending on the exact grade. So the NFL on turnover-worthy plays this year is 4 for 180. That's a 2.2% completion percentage. For 85 yards, 0 touchdowns, and 78 interceptions. If passer rating didn't have a bottom limit, it would be a -174.7 passer rating. So my point is, when we're slapping a -1, -1.5, or -2 on the play, it's because percentage-wise it's going to end up in a bad play. Now, once you make that bad pass, whether it does actually become an interception, whether it does go through the interceptor's hands and into your teammate's hands for a 20-yard catch or whatever it might be, it's not changing the grade. But 43% of turnover-worthy plays are becoming interceptions. And I know that might sound low on the surface, but if you're before the play, you're like, hey, the quarterback's going to make a play where the defense has a 43% chance of intercepting it. It's going to get completed 4 out of 180 times. That's a pretty bad play by the quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, that was the old adage that if you pass the ball, 3 things can happen and 2 of them are bad.
Right.
There's a reason that kind of thing happens. And even if you think about offenses completing passes, knowing what everybody's doing, they're completing up at 60%. I mean, higher now, but 60% was always that benchmark. And that's with receivers that are paid to catch the ball and quarterbacks that are trying to get it exactly to them,
right,
as opposed to balls that are off the cuff to defensive backs that aren't necessarily good at catching the ball. It's a pretty high number.
And so then the other part about it is when the grade gets worse, those percentages go up through the roof. So a -1 throw is going to have a lower percentage of interceptions. A -1.5 is closer to 60%. A -2 this year, 85%. Those things are going to get it. They're getting intercepted.
I mean, that's literally just the percentage that defenders aren't able to catch it.
Yes, pretty much. And again, it's not changing the throw. If you throw we're not handing out a whole bunch of -2s. Those are the Brett Favre in the NFC Championship, maybe. I mean, those are the passes that, I'm sorry, we brought this up multiple times this morning. I got you mad today before the pod instead of the other way around.
You were playing the 2009 NFC Championship game.
After you told me how heartbreaking it was.
Yes, after I documented why that was one of the biggest kind of gut-wrenching defeats in NFL history, you proceeded to throw it up on the TV and play it out.
I was showing empathy. I was trying to put myself in your shoes and relive it and try to understand your angst with the game. So yes, the -2 interception is really, really bad. So yeah, just wanted to throw those numbers out at you guys. The turnover-worthy play is not good. Let's go to our friend Mike Renner. He's going to wrap up the show with Will Montgomery, former NFL center, tons of experience, a new PFF analyst, and they're going to discuss a little bit about pass protection. So they tell me.
What's up, guys? We're back this week with some more offensive line talk. I'm Mike Renner, joined by Will Montgomery, always on Wednesdays. And we touched on a little last week about how when you were in Denver pass protecting for Peyton Manning, that was the easiest quarterback to protect for. And his statue went up in Indianapolis this past weekend, and the Hall of Fame quarterback was never sacked more than 29 times in a total season. And that season of 2014, when you were in Denver, he was only sacked 17 times on 597 passes.
Right.
Unbelievable rate. So you touched on it. Go into a little more depth. What made him so easy to pass protect for? What were the things he did that avoided sacks?
Right. Well, he was sacked 17 times, and I think at least 5 of those times he went down before anybody touched him, just because he didn't want to get hit. But like I touched on last week, he would always step up to that magic number of 7 yards, which I like to reference a lot. And he was also the master of reading defense. So everybody likes to go into Peyton Manning's snap count and his use of Omaha and all those crazy words. But all he was trying to do is get the defense to tip their hand, where the safety is going to roll, which defensive end was dropping. So there'd be some kind of a zone blitz the opposite way. So he just wanted to see the defense tip their hand. When he was back there throwing the ball would always be out on time. There's some quarterbacks, when you have a 3-step drop and it's not open, they'll hold the ball and they'll get sacked, and that's not on the O-line. Or if there's some kind of a screen and some big D lineman just grabs the running back and doesn't let the running back out, instead of, usually Peyton would just throw the ball away there and just, mitigate his losses, where some other quarterbacks would take an actual sack there. And there were a lot of pass stunts. I remember that season where, these 3-man games where the looping defensive end or defensive tackle would never get home, even if we didn't even block him, because the ball was always out. And I know, in particular, offensive tackles loved playing there, because literally, regardless of how they blocked, there was going to be low sack numbers. Like you said, there was only 17 sacks that season. And obviously, that was large in part of what Peyton was doing, not necessarily what the offensive line was doing.
Yeah, that timing aspect, the 7 yards thing, we'll get into a little bit more in depth, but that timing aspect is the biggest thing that I notice on a regular basis with guys taking sacks. When you have a 1-step drop out of the shotgun and a guy's taking almost 3 seconds to throw it, that's on the quarterback there. If he gets sacked, that you just cannot pass protect, to 5 yards. That the guy's gonna get bull rushed into your lap. If you have a 3-step drop out of the gun and the guy's holding it for almost 4 seconds, all of a sudden the offensive line cannot physically hold up for that long. And Peyton Manning was routinely sub 2.6, which it's hard to sack a quarterback in under 2.6 seconds. Even guys with free runs still takes around 2 seconds to get to the quarterback.
And not to go off on a complete tangent, but I remember another game when, we had John Beck at quarterback and I was with the Redskins against the Buffalo Bills. It might have been the 2011 season. We gave up like 8 sacks in one game. That next week in the media, the O-line was getting killed. But if you go back and document each of those sacks, there was really only 2 of them on the O-line. I believe the tight ends and the backs gave up a few. I believe there was one 3-step drop where the quarterback didn't throw it and held it and got sacked on. I believe one of those sacks was mine on a 3-step drop. But I wasn't going to go to the media. No, the O-line didn't give up 8 sacks. We only gave up 1 or 2 sacks. So a lot of those things you just kind of have to bite the bullet as offensive linemen and just assume everybody thinks the O-line missed all those sacks.
Yeah, that's why I can't believe all these. I can't believe offensive linemen hate us. We're the ones saying, "Hey, these aren't on you guys." When all these sack numbers, most of them aren't on you. I actually went back and looked at our numbers from a season ago. We only charged the offensive line with 56% of the total sacks taken a season ago.
Well, and that actually makes a lot of sense because the O-line is just about half the guys on the field at any one point in time with the 11 offensive guys. So literally half of the time it's on the O-line, half of the time it's on a back not picking up his guy, it's on a tight end, it's on a quarterback not throwing high, it's on the quarterback setting too deep, or I would say it's probably on the quarterback a lot more times than what people actually realize. And it's my mission to blame the quarterback as often as possible.
Yeah, let's get back to that 7-yard number. What makes the 7 yards so different than, say, getting to 9 yards? Because guys will drop to 10 yards, 11 yards.
Well, but then they step up to that 7-8 mark.
When you have a drop that's called to, you have a deep drop, you have a play action pass or some drop that is going to about 10 or 11 yards. What do you change at all your protection, or are you still saying I'm hitting, if I can push past 7 every play, I should be good? Or,
there's obviously, when you're taking a shot, sometimes the quarterback will remind you in the huddle, hey, this one's going to be a long one, so hang on. But just in general, I'm speaking in generalities, if you ever went to an offensive line, a training camp practice, they would put like a dummy or a rag or something 7 yards behind the center. So whoever's up, the tackle, the guard, the center, as long as they keep that D lineman off that spot 7 yards deep from the center, they would say, okay, the O lineman won this rep. Because whether the quarterback steps back to 10, 12, whatever, he needs to then step up, because I never played offensive tackle because I was not tall enough or had long enough arms. But those guys, it's an all-day job to ride those ends by at 9 or 10 yards. And if the quarterback is hanging out at 10 yards, especially 4+ seconds, then that's on the quarterback every day of the week. You kind of get in the gray area when you get in the 8, 9. But if the quarterback, like I always like to say, if the quarterback steps up to 7, then 100% of the time that's on the O-line. If he's back at the 9+ mark is when it gets gray for sure.
So the protection or the what you're tasked to do as an offensive lineman doesn't really change based on the passing call.
It does change to a degree. Like I said, if okay, like you might have 3 or 4 shots where it's going to bank on double moves. So, okay, the quarterback may need a little extra time, space, whatever it is. But more times than not, the quarterback needs to step up, because if you're an offensive tackle, it's impossible to block, a very good, like Von Miller, you cannot. He's going to run that edge at 9 or 10 yards no matter what you do. Mm-hmm. So if the quarterback stays back at 10 yards, Vaughn will get 10 sacks that game. if you step up.
Yeah, there's just too much space for a tackle to.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I also made this example one time to somebody, like when you're playing basketball, that hoop is behind you when you're playing defense. The same thing when you're an O-lineman, you kind of have that mental image, okay, that hoop is that quarterback. He's going to be back there at 7 or 8 yards. And then all of a sudden, if the hoop goes back to 12 yards, well, you can't defend that area because you're defending that spot of 7 to 8 yards mentally. And you kind of know where that footwork, that spacing, that visual awareness, where the quarterback should be. And if he, for whatever reason, doesn't or can't step up, then a lot of those tackles get unfair sacks.
I actually love that analogy. Anytime you can make a cross-sport analogy, I'm all for it. And that one actually seems perfect to me. So what are some schemes or some quarterbacks in the NFL today that hit 7 yards and are really good at, sack avoidance in terms of being good on that 7 yard mark?
Well, it's always fun watching Tom Brady, and you'll see him back there at, 5, 6, 7 yards, and he actually will just stand there like a statue. He gets to his spot and he'll stay there to his own detriment at times. And so he knows he has that pocket awareness. And some other guys who I really like with their pocket awareness is obviously Aaron Rodgers and Drew Brees. And there would be times I'd be doing my film study, in whether it's Green Bay or New Orleans, would have a common opponent, and I'd be looking at my 3 technique or Shade or whoever it is, and they would just beat an all-pro O-lineman the week before. I'd be like, man, how am I going to block this guy? And you would see Aaron Rodgers or Drew Brees just sidestep and hit like a 50-yard bomb down the field. I'm like, oh, well, that would be great if I could totally whiff and we could still get a 50-yard touchdown pass on this.
Yeah.
So those guys, sidestep guys, amazingly in the pocket, and that pocket awareness is so, clutch. And then there's also the guys like Ben Roethlisberger, who he likes to hold on to the ball forever. It is a risk-reward type system. There was one season when they won the Super Bowl, I believe he took the most sacks in the NFL that season. But you can make up for sacks if you hit enough explosive plays down the field. Once you get past, 3 or 4 seconds of holding on to the ball, it's on the quarterback. And sometimes those quarterbacks want to wait till that second, third, fourth window opens up. So as long as they can hit a couple of those shots to make up for some of those sacks, then sometimes it, works out for them.
I'll also add Alex Smith to that list. I was watching the game, was that Sunday night? He hits 7 yards and he sticks there real well, and I like his pocket presence. I put that pass protection scheme up there as with those other guys. So I was going to say, if you have a quarterback like Tom Brady who's hitting 7 yards and your offensive line's still getting whipped, you have a guy still getting crushed, what are some other ways that you can aid that guy? So you have a right tackle, or say it's you're at left guard and you're just getting your butt handed to you all game in pass protection.
That would never happen, obviously.
Okay, yeah, so say it's hypothetical.
Say it's somebody else that's getting their butt whipped.
But
no, yeah.
What do you deal with it? Because so obviously if you can't sub a better player in or someone else in, what do you do? What were some things you did when you were in the NFL, either schematically or just any way to aid that guy?
Well, I've been involved in a few games when you're blocking a guy, a Pro Bowl caliber D lineman who is just literally unblockable. And instead of the offensive line protection schemes, normally the center goes out and IDs the mic, and they either have the mic or they're sifting the mic all the way out, to the slot defender. And usually the back would have the same to the safety to the other side or whatever protection scheme that it is. But if you have a guy that you cannot block, you just abort all protection schemes and you slide to wherever he is. So if there's a 3 technique or if there's a defensive end, you slide to whichever side he is on. And then you say to the guys on the other side, good luck. You're on an island because we have to slide to where the pressure is. But there's other ways in general as well. I remember another game in particular, a couple games, I believe the 2011 season, when I was with the Redskins and we beat the Giants twice that year, and that was the year they won the Super Bowl. They had all these great pass rushers, and at the time our O-line was made up with a bunch of on the street guys. Myself, Corey Lickensteiger, Tyler Columbus, basically some no-name offensive linemen, and we used that Kyle Shanahan system of O-line friendly schemes. We were run heavy, so we ran the ball 60% of the time. When we did throw the ball downfield, it was off of play action shots, a lot of move, the pocket protections, whether it was sprint passes, bootlegs, keepers. There's your quick wide receiver screens, your screen to the running back. And also first down is so important. So if you can get 4 or 5 yards on first down and stay even with the sticks, first down, 2nd and 5, 3rd and 1 to 2, then that defensive lineman has to honor the run first. So basically, and one more interesting PFF point about Kyle Shanahan is actually the first time I heard about PFF was around that 2011 season, and I believe you guys have your quarterly rankings. And at the time, I was ranked the 18th best NFL player. And, Kyle Shanahan and a bunch of those guys obviously enjoyed that stat. So that following week, Kyle usually has the first 15 script on the play sheet. He did a first 18 script that week in honor of myself being the 18th best ranked NFL player. So I'll give you guys credit for that one as well. But and then basically to close up that point I was making, I hate empty protection on first down. So third down is hard enough as it is blocking these pass rushers, because when you have to pass block in general, it's advantage defense. So you do not want to have to do that more than 10 times a game. Hopefully on a down that it's definitely going to be a pass. So if you're in empty protection on 1st and 10 when there's no running back there, and then you're just like, man, yeah, I'm like, why are we doing this? At least pretend that there's a chance of a zone or a draw and stick a back there and flare them out if you want to have it be empty. But, sometimes, there's a reason, or I don't know. I never knew what the reason was, but on first and 10, I would prefer not to be an empty.
Yeah, so many times when I see, offensive linemen getting killed, on Sunday on Twitter during a game because they're just getting crushed, but they're in an offense where, like you mentioned, they're going empty. They're in a pass-heavy offense where they're not helping them out at all. They're taking deep drops every play. They're, making it obvious that they're passing. That's the hardest situation you can have as an offensive lineman. Guys, like you mentioned, Kyle Shanahan, there are offenses that do a good job of sort of disguising the pass, not putting you in the hardest possible situation in terms of one-on-one pass protection every single snap. Because you see it all the time, and when you, like you mentioned, the one-on-ones in training camp, defensive linemen win a majority of those. It is not an offensive lineman heavy drill. They lose a lot of the time. When you're completely one-on-one with a guy, you're going to lose a lot. And it's offenses and schemes that put their offensive linemen in those one-on-one situations more often. It's no surprise that they're losing and their quarterbacks are getting hit more often as well.
No question. And I remember, the night before many games with Kyle Shanahan there in Washington, we would get that first 15 script for the opening plays of, that Sunday game the next day. And quickly we would go over the first 15 to see how many dropbacks versus, the boots and screens and draws. And we'd be high-fiving each other if we were going to open up the game with a bootleg. Like, all right, guys, we got a freebie on that one. Or, occasionally on your third and longs, those are basically disaster downs. So occasionally you will just run a draw or, a one back power or maybe just some kind of a run where it's a throwaway down with the potential of actually getting that first down. So you would see some of our third and long game plan. And if we did have a screen or draw or run designed for one of our first third down pickups, we'd also be high-fiving the night before knowing that we wouldn't have a hard one-on-one pass pro to maybe the second quarter.
Yeah. So, all right, one last question. It's one more hypothetical here. It's 3rd and 10. You're left guard. You're going up against Aaron Donald at 3 tech. There's a wide 9 on that side as well, and you got the center sliding away from you. How many times has Aaron Donald beaten you?
Well, I would say not many. All you have to do is go back to my Denver film against the Rams in 2014, and I was one-on-one against him several times, and I believe he did not get past me. I'm
going to have to go back and I'm going to go check that.
I probably got away with some illegal holds, and I believe there was another time. I believe he did like his Allen Iverson crossover where he sets me up going to my right and then does some insane change of direction and yanks me back the other way. And with my left hand, I just grabbed anything I could get a hold of, and I believe I got him right in his nether regions, which stopped him in his shoes. But Aaron Donald is a very good pass rusher, no question. He has that 3-way go. He'll bull rush you early. Then he'll kind of set up his finesse moves. He can go outside, inside, down the middle, but he's a very good rusher, no doubt.
I'm going to have to go back and check to see if just exactly how many. We'll talk about that next Wednesday. But
all right, I can't wait.
Thanks again for the time. We'll kick it back to Steve and Sam.
Thank you, guys. That was very insightful. Appreciate having Will as a part of the team and the insight that he brings as a former NFL player, buying in to the PFF system. That'll do it for us today. That's our Mailbag edition, our favorite episode every single week. It's fueled by you guys, the fans, the listeners. Please hit us up at podcasts@profootballfocus.com if you guys want to have your thoughts, your game-changing NFL theories, whatever it might be, played on the podcast. And then don't forget, if you guys don't have PFF Edge or Elite, you guys are missing out on all the fun. The best way to get Edge is over at profootballfocus.com/PFF-offers. And then for PFF Elite, Sam, we're going to give away one per week for every 5-star review that we get. So we're still doing that. Leave your review, leave your name, email address, Twitter handle, some way we can get in touch with you. We'll pick one lucky winner for Elite every week. And if you guys just want to purchase it, profootballfocus.com, go check it out. Elite is there. Tell us about the new features we're adding to it, Sam, because we add to it every week with new surprises.
Yeah, this is the game-by-game grading. So you get the grade lock, the post-grade lock grades on every single player every single week. That gives you the final number. You want to see how your guy played this particular week. You get that, and you get that for every week of this season and the 2016 season.
Fantastic. And we've got one more episode. If you guys are new listeners, please hit that subscribe button so you can get all 4 big episodes every single week. We've got one more. It'll be the week 5, right? Week 5 or 6?
Or week 5 now.
6. Week 6 preview edition with Sam, Mike, and myself. That'll be coming out on Friday morning. So thank you guys for listening, and we'll chat again next time.